Long before we could just pop something in the microwave or tap a screen to order food, our grandparents knew how to turn simple ingredients into something special. When their wallets were empty, they still found a way, whether it was a pot of soup from just a stone or a salad made from dandelion leaves. That wasn't just about eating. It was a lesson in creativity and perseverance. Today, let's open Grandma's cookbook together and discover those humble dishes that hold the strong spirit of resilience during hard times. Let's start with an old folktale Grandma used to tell about a soup that began with just a stone, which became a warm reality during the Great Depression. This dish wasn't just a recipe, but a story about community. When families didn't have meat, fresh vegetables, sometimes not enough to even fill a bowl. The meal started with Grandma boiling a pot of water and dropping a clean stone in. Then, each neighbor would add scraps they didn't dare throw away. That could be onion peels, carrot tops, a withered potato scrap, or, if they were lucky, a small leftover bone fragment. The secret to the dish wasn't the ingredients, but the patience of simmering it for many hours. This slow cooking released every last bit of flavor. The onion peels brought a subtle depth, the potato skins provided thickness, and the bone fragment, if available, created unexpected richness. During the Depression, the total cost of this soup was only about 15 cents, an extraordinary price when it could feed the whole neighborhood. This cooking technique has helped modern families save up to $125 every month just by using things they usually throw away. The lesson back then about utilizing every ingredient is worth learning today. If your grandpa was a soldier, he probably knew this cream chipped beef on toast dish, often called by the less affectionate name SOS. This dish is chipped beef sliced thin as paper, swimming in a thick, creamy white sauce, and served over slices of toast. The recipe couldn't be simpler. Melt butter, stir in flour to make a roux or fat mixture, then slowly add milk until the sauce thickens and is smooth, and finally add the chopped chipped beef. Here's a small tip mothers back then often did. They rinsed the beef first to remove some of the salt, an adjustment learned out of necessity when high blood pressure became a concern. Chipped beef was preserved without refrigeration and stretched to feed many mouths. This dish was cheap, filling, and easy to make, providing abundant protein, helping maintain energy through long workdays. Back then, the cost to feed 6 people was about 15 cents. Today, the total cost for the whole meal is about $3.50, or about 58 cents per serving. The U.S. Army Manual recommended SOS as breakfast because it was high in calories and easy to scale up. This hearty and cozy soup was the choice for families on cold winter days when the pantry held nothing but a bit of dried peas. Your grandparents turned it into a meal that stuck to your ribs. Dried peas were simmered for hours with an onion and maybe a ham bone if they were lucky. The long cooking turned those hard little peas into a thick, green, dense meal. The special part of this dish was the addition of dumplings. The dumplings were made from simple balls of flour, salt, and water, then dropped into the boiling soup. As they puffed up, they soaked up the soup's flavor. The dumplings helped the soup stretch further when there was no meat, turning a humble pot of peas into a filling meal that warmed you from the inside out. Children in the family would often count the dumplings to make sure everyone got their share. This soup became a Thursday dinner tradition in Scandinavian immigrant families throughout the Midwest. It was a meal that warmed you from the inside, a testament to the warmth created through cleverness. A Depression-era breakfast dish originating from the Pennsylvania Dutch region, where your grandparents believed in using everything but the oink of the pig. This dish exemplified the philosophy of utilizing every part of the animal that the butcher didn't want. Families would save every usable part of the pig. They were simmered into a rich broth mixed with cornmeal and poured into loaf molds to cool overnight. Once hardened, Scrapple was sliced and fried in a hot pan until golden brown. The outer crust was crispy, while the inside was soft and savory. For those who grew up eating this dish, the first sizzle of a piece of Scrapple in a cast iron pan was a time machine, bringing them back to those chilly mornings. This breakfast dish turned leftover pork, cornmeal, and spices into a desirable meal. During the Depression, this cost only 3 cents per serving. Today, making it yourself is still just 60 cents per serving, much cheaper than store-bought breakfast meats. This dish still helps modern families save up to $90 every month by substituting expensive bacon or sausage. Nothing speaks more clearly of hard times than the onion sandwich when little else was available in the pantry. This meal was incredibly simple. 2 slices of bread, a thick slice of onion, salt, and pepper. If times weren't too tough, a thin layer of butter or lard might be spread on. The pungent flavor of the raw onion provided the only flavor to that bland meal. Children sometimes sprinkled sugar on top to reduce the sharpness, a kind of poor man's caramelized onion. In coal mining towns, men carried them into the darkness because the pungent smell meant no one wanted to steal their lunch. Onions were believed to help combat coal dust in the lungs. Onions provided necessary vitamins when fresh vegetables became scarce and expensive. This meal helped provide essential nutrients during long work shifts. When we talk about these simple, heartwarming dishes, we are not just recalling recipes, but the love and resourcefulness of our grandparents' generation. It's the memory of how they used every little bit to create fullness and joy. The stories of creativity in the old kitchen are priceless. Please share your warmest story about a Depression-era meal your family preserved in the comments below. Perhaps no recipe captures the cleverness in the face of scarcity better than water pie, which starts with just an empty crust. When families could no longer afford milk, eggs, or cream, the essential ingredients for a decent dessert, Grandma still managed to create a small sweetness. The empty pie crust was filled with water, sugar, flour, butter, and vanilla. Through baking, this seemingly flavorless mixture transformed into a smooth, custard-like filling, fragrant with vanilla. Families saved their precious sugar rations to stretch into a dessert that felt luxurious. This pie appeared in community cookbooks across the South, sometimes called Depression Pie or Desperation Pie. Water pie was a way to create a dessert from almost nothing. It helped maintain dignity and a sense of normalcy for the family during abnormal times. Sadly, due to the deep shame associated with poverty, no one admitting their family ever made water pie became a mark of that generation's privacy and self-respect. When paychecks ran out, your grandparents didn't starve. They foraged right in the backyard. That stubborn backyard weed, the dandelion, became a life-saving salad green. Families would pick the young leaves in early spring, before the flowers bloomed, when the greens were tender and much less bitter. They were thoroughly washed, soaked in salt water to remove grit and the natural bitterness. Then, the greens were simply mixed with vinegar, a pinch of salt, and maybe a little warm bacon grease for the dressing, creating a fresh, tangy flavor. Nutritionally, dandelion is a powerhouse. It contains more vitamin A than milk, more vitamin C than tomatoes, and more iron than spinach. This dish was completely free. This was survival with dignity and a way to reconnect with nature and history. This provided free and abundant nutrition, helping modern families save hundreds of dollars annually. If you remember seeing your parents kneeling in the yard, basket in hand, picking dandelions under the sun, you know this wasn't just a salad, it was survival with dignity. This miraculous one-pot dish was bitterly named after President Herbert Hoover during the Great Depression. This stew originated in school cafeterias and community kitchens. Hoover Stew combined anything available on hand, often pasta for bulk, cut-up hot dogs, canned corn, and canned tomatoes for flavor and color. The recipe varied depending on donations. Sometimes government cheese substituted for hot dogs or cabbage substituted for corn. Community stew pots simmered daily in the shantytowns known as Hoovervilles. This meal was never the same twice, but always satisfying. This meal stretched a small amount of protein. One hot dog could flavor a pot feeding 12 people, with pasta and vegetables to nourish many hungry mouths. Back then, a large pot cost only 26 cents and could feed 12 students. Today, the total cost is about $6 or about 50 cents per serving. This helps modern families save up to $100 every month. This dessert, also known as wacky cake or crazy cake, is a testament to the resourcefulness of bakers when the grocery store shelves were bare. This cake is special because it contains no eggs, no butter, and no milk, ingredients that were expensive and scarce. The secret lies in simple kitchen chemistry. A bit of vinegar reacts with baking soda to create the rise, while oil gives the cake its typical moist texture. This dish happens to be vegan. The cake brought small joy, a comforting sweetness, and reminded everyone that even in the darkest days, there was still room for sweet things. This cake allowed families to have dessert when expensive ingredients were scarce. During the Great Depression, the cost to bake this whole cake was just 15 cents. It reminded everyone that even in the darkest days, there was still room for sweetness. If you ever helped sprinkle powdered sugar on a cooled cake after school, you know it wasn't just dessert. It was a reward for persevering. The humble, cheap, and reliable potato was turned by your grandparents into a creamy soup that felt luxurious during hard times. The basic recipe only consisted of potatoes, water, a pinch of salt, and the wisdom of letting time do the work. By simmering the potatoes gently and slowly, the natural starch dissolved, turning the broth into something thick, smooth, and warm, without needing cream. The recipe was adaptable. Families might add bacon grease instead of butter or use wild onions for extra flavor. Potatoes were sometimes the only vegetable left in the house. In Irish immigrant communities, this soup carried memories of the famine back home, when potatoes meant life itself. Potatoes were cheap, filling, and easy to grow. Back then, it cost only 5 cents per bowl. Today, about 40 cents per bowl. Modern home cooks say they save up to $140 every month. This was a meal that staved off hunger with ingredients anyone could afford, showing quiet pride and resilience. If these stories bring back warm memories and honor the previous generation, let's hit the HYPE button right below the video, and together we will preserve this precious legacy. This is the ultimate proof of cooking by the waste not, want not philosophy, turning potato skins into a delicious snack. When your grandparents peeled potatoes for soup or mash, the peels were never thrown away. The thick potato peels, scrubbed clean, were simmered with onions and salt until they released starch into the cooking water. The cleaned peels were patted dry and dropped into a hot pan, often fried in saved bacon grease or cooking oil. They were fried until they were crispy, salty, and could be seasoned with salt, pepper, or dried herbs. Potato peels actually have more nutrients than the potato itself, containing more fiber, potassium, and iron, making their use incredibly nutritionally wise. The cost to make this soup was almost zero. Stale bread wasn't waste in the Depression kitchen. It was an opportunity to create a warm, comforting dish. Stiff, cubed stale bread was soaked in a simple custard mixture of milk, eggs, sugar, and cinnamon. The recipe might use water instead of milk, or add flour to stretch the eggs when they were scarce. After soaking long enough, the pudding was baked until golden. The aroma of cinnamon, vanilla, and sweetness spread through the house, drawing the children running. Bakeries sold old bread at a discount, and housewives turned these bargains into desserts that tasted like luxury. This dish helped utilize every breadcrumb when not a single piece could be discarded. Back then, making the whole tray cost about 18 cents. Today, the total cost is about $3, or just 50 cents per serving. This dish helps modern families save up to $65 every month. Housewives recalled when it was simply a way to use up every bread scrap. This was the basic meal of the poor, when families made a meal out of ham hocks, cheap joint bones left over after the rich ate the better cuts of meat. Dried beans were soaked overnight, then simmered slowly with the ham hocks. Ham hocks are full of connective tissue and small bits of meat. Hours of cooking caused the meat to fall off the bone in tender shreds, and the beans absorbed the deep, smoky pork flavor of the bone. The meal was often served with cornbread to soak up the rich broth. Farming families who butchered their own pigs used every part of the animal out of necessity. Ham hocks could be smoked and preserved, flavoring meals throughout the winter when fresh meat was scarce. This flavored large pots of beans that could feed families for days, providing essential protein and fullness. Today, chefs are rediscovering this humble cut for artisanal soups, but for many generations, it simply meant survival. When gardens failed to yield and the pantry was empty, rabbit stew became a free source of protein for rural families willing to hunt. The lean meat of rabbit required slow cooking to become tender. This stew combined the hunted rabbit meat with root vegetables, carrots, potatoes, onions, whatever grew in the backyard garden. By stewing, a small amount of rabbit meat was stretched to the maximum to feed the entire family. During World War II, the government encouraged raising rabbits in victory gardens to convert garden scraps into protein when meat was rationed. Children learned early not to name the rabbits because they weren't pets. They were survival. This dish provided free protein. This is an example of extreme thrift, when households extracted the last bit of sweetness from corn cobs after the kernels had been removed. To make the jelly, the used corn cobs were boiled to create a sweet liquid. This liquid was then combined with sugar and pectin, resulting in a delicate honey-colored jelly. The flavor is hard to describe, faintly corn-like, but with floral notes similar to honey. It was spread on biscuits or cornbread, providing sweetness when sugar was rationed during wartime. This jelly helped stretch sweetness further than most other recipes during World War II. The dish provided sweetness and comfort when sugar was scarce. This recipe appeared in handwritten family cookbooks. Today, it is being rediscovered and renamed an artisan item. Despite the unappetizing name, this soup represented remarkable resourcefulness because nothing edible ended up in the actual garbage bin. The dish was based on the philosophy of utilizing all forgotten food scraps. Vegetable peels, wilted greens, and meat bones were simmered together in water with salt and pepper. The soup pot often sat on the back of the stove and was constantly added to. Potato water, pasta cooking water, even the liquid from canned vegetables enriched this ever-changing meal. A Depression-era cookbook called it perpetual soup. Every night, the family ate whatever version existed. This soup provided vitamins and flavor when fresh food wasn't available, making the most of valuable scraps and liquids. This soup was survival in liquid form. It provided a stable source of vitamins and flavor for the family, especially important on days when there was no fresh food or meat to cook. This desperation dessert was created to provide a sweet and sour flavor similar to lemon or apple when fruit was too expensive or out of season. When lemons and citrus fruits became luxuries, your grandparents turned to vinegar. This pie combined vinegar, sugar, eggs, butter, and spices inside a simple crust. The chemical reaction between the vinegar and baking soda created a light texture similar to more expensive fruit pies. Cinnamon and nutmeg disguised the harshness of the vinegar. This pie helped stretch available sweeteners into a dessert that seemed luxurious. Sometimes this was labeled mock lemon pie to avoid children's complaints about eating vinegar. Selling vinegar pie fed families with dignity when self-respect prevented accepting charity. It was often sold for a few cents cheaper than traditional versions at church social gatherings. This was a warming dish brought to America by Chinese immigrants, helping stretch one precious egg into a meal for 4 people. Eggs were valuable, almost a luxury during the Depression. To make this soup, beaten eggs were slowly poured into hot broth, creating silky golden ribbons dancing in the soup like lace. The broth could be made from chicken feet, chicken backs simmered with onion, or simply a bouillon cube when times were toughest. The soup helped children feel they had eaten something special thanks to the visual transformation. This stretched one egg to feed 4 people. It was one of the cheapest and most protein-rich meals. Back then, this cost about 3 cents per bowl. Families saved their precious eggs for this soup, knowing that the visual transformation made the children feel like they had eaten something special. This hearty meal proved that flavor didn't need fancy ingredients and culinary miracle of Southern kitchens. Simple biscuits were made with flour, lard, or vegetable shortening, and maybe buttermilk. The gravy was made from saved meat drippings, bacon fat, stirring flour into a roux or fat mixture, then adding milk or water until thick. During hard times, the gravy contained little meat. Instead, the flavor came from generously sprinkling black pepper to create the impression of more meat than was actually there. The combination of fat and carbohydrates provided cheap energy for farmers and factory workers through long shifts, helping maintain physical strength when manual labor demanded fuel. Back then, the cost to feed 6 people was about 11 cents. Today, about $2.80 total, or 47 cents per serving. The U.S. military used variations in World War II. This helps modern families save up to $90 monthly. For many, the smell of baking biscuits and simmering gravy is tied to memories of home, pure survival. The respectful and nostalgic tone our grandparents created through these recipes is truly precious. If you're looking for more nostalgic trips down memory lane like this, please hit the like and subscribe buttons so you don't miss the next insightful stories. When steak became an unreachable dream, families turned to Bologna, a mixture of ground meat scraps pressed into rounds. Frying Bologna transformed this humble cold cut into something sizzling, hot, and smelling like actual cooking. Mothers often cut a single slit in the edge of the Bologna slice to prevent it from curling up when frying, then fried it until the edges were crispy and the center bubbled. This was usually served on white bread with mustard, maybe adding a slice of government cheese. During the Depression and continuing through the recession of the 1970s, fried Bologna became dinner when paychecks were stretched too thin. Children often loved it, especially the Bologna bubbles that formed during cooking. The dish provided a hot sandwich that felt like restaurant food when regular meat couldn't be afforded. Children never realized that their parents served it out of necessity rather than choice. This meal embodies thrift most clearly, utilizing the leftover ham bone after feasts to create an intensely flavored meal. Navy or Great Northern beans were soaked overnight, then simmered all day with a ham bone still clinging to a bit of meat, onions, and perhaps a bay leaf. The long cooking extracted every molecule of flavor from the bone. These beans tasted better over several days, becoming thicker and richer in flavor. The ham bone flavored meals for days in a row. This recipe was sometimes honestly titled temporary beans. The dish provided complete protein when combining beans and a small amount of meat. This is proof that the generosity of the holiday was stretched over multiple meals through thrift. When your grandparents' garden was overflowing with tomatoes but little else adorned the pantry, tomato gravy turned basic ingredients into cozy comfort food. Bacon grease or butter formed the base, flour provided thickness, and garden tomatoes supplied both liquid and bright acidity. This gravy was poured over biscuits, rice, or even simple slices of white bread. The recipe adapted seasonally, using green tomatoes, ripe tomatoes, or canned tomatoes through the winter months. The meal provided vitamin C and flavor, brightening otherwise bland, starchy meals during the winter months. In Appalachian communities, where culinary traditions reflect many generations of making do, this dish remains beloved. Perhaps nothing speaks more directly about childhood hunger than the sugar sandwich. This sweet treat cost only a few cents to make. The recipe was just 2 slices of white bread spread with margarine or butter, then sprinkled with sugar. Sometimes, cinnamon was added for spice if the budget allowed. Children believed they were getting dessert, not understanding the family's desperation. This simple meal filled hungry stomachs and provided quick energy when little else was available. This simple combination reappears whenever economic hardship hits, becoming an edible economic indicator across generations. This dish appears in the oral histories of older Americans with lingering nostalgia or shame for having been so poor. The ultimate testament to waste not, want not cooking, this potato peel soup turned what most people throw away into actual meals. This soup was a lifesaver for so many families. Thick potato peels, scrubbed clean, were simmered with onions and salt until they released starch into the cooking water. The resulting broth was often thickened with a spoonful of flour. Sometimes a dash of milk was added. During World War II rationing, government posters encouraged this soup as a way to extract nutrition from every scrap of food. Versions of this soup appeared in cookbooks from various countries like Germany, Ireland, and America, reflecting regional hardship. This meal extracted vitamins from every scrap of food that would have been thrown away. The humble potato peel connected human experience across continents. When bread became too stale for sandwiches, but too precious to throw away, it was transformed into soup. Cubed stale bread was simmered in broth, often made from bouillon cubes when meat bones weren't available, until it softened and thickened the liquid. A beaten egg, whisked into the hot liquid just before serving, added necessary protein and richness. Italians call this ribollita, and the Pennsylvania Dutch call it brown soup. The result tasted much better than its humble ingredients suggested. Every culture facing an empty pantry discovered this method of stretching minimal ingredients. This is the ultimate food illusion, a clever creation that used Ritz crackers instead of apples to mimic the texture and flavor of real apples. Crispy Ritz crackers or soda crackers were simmered in a sugar syrup made with cream of tartrate and lemon essence. The crackers softened in the syrup, while the cream of tartrate added the necessary acidity to imitate apples. This chemical magic was very convincing. This recipe famously appeared on the Ritz cracker box in the 1930s and remained there for decades. The dish was born during the Dust Bowl years, when fruit became prohibitively expensive. This dessert provided the comfort of apple pie without the unobtainable fruit. Back then, it cost only 18 cents to make, compared to 75 cents for a real apple pie. Today, $4 total, or 50 cents a slice. This meal appeared in children's lunchboxes when cold cuts became unaffordable. It was a stark slice of a family's poverty. It was simply a thin layer of yellow mustard between two slices of bread, nothing more, providing the appearance of a normal sandwich. The strong flavor of the mustard made the absence of meat less noticeable. The mustard sandwich became shorthand for Depression-era hardship. This meal ensured children had lunch at school even if parents couldn't provide meat. The mustard sandwich is proof of how low circumstances had fallen during the Depression. Preserved salt cod provided protein when fresh meat wasn't available, a staple in fishing communities. Salt cod needed to be soaked before cooking to reduce the saltiness. The fish was flaked and stirred into a creamy white sauce, then poured over potatoes or biscuits for complete meals. Families added chopped hard-boiled eggs when available to boost protein and visual appeal. Salt cod traveled well and stored indefinitely. Catholic families ate this on Fridays during Lent, turning religious obligation into practical thrift. This was a primary source of protein when other options failed, especially during the winter months. A simple meal combining three basic ingredients, bread, milk, and butter, that provided comfort and nutrition. Toast became the warm base for hot milk poured over it. This could be sweetened with little sugar or made savory with salt and pepper. The milk softened the toast while providing necessary calcium and protein. This easily digestible meal was especially important for the youngest and oldest family members or when someone was sick. In literature, milk toast became shorthand for blandness and weakness, an unfair assessment of a meal that sustained families through their darkest financial hours. This meal provided comfort and nutrition when little else was available, ideal for the sick. Looking back at these 30 recipes, we see how our grandparents created pure comfort and nutrition from almost nothing. This makes us reflect on the waste in modern kitchens today, where we often discard what they considered a lifesaver. What do you think is the biggest lesson our generation can learn from their thriftiness? These simple and humble dishes didn't just fill your grandparents' stomachs, they were resourceful meals, demonstrating resilience and boundless love. Each recipe is a slice of history, reminding us that warmth and dignity don't come from luxury, but from creativity and compassion. We hope this nostalgic journey has touched your heart. Please share this video with family and friends to preserve these precious memories together.